When writing a sentence, you must have a subject and a verb. And on top of that, your subjects and your verbs must agree. So in this lesson, we're going to be talking about subject and verb agreement and the rules that we can learn that will help us better understand this. So the first rule is that the subject and the verb must agree in number. So the noun or the pronoun that is the subject of a sentence must agree in number with the verb. So if we have a singular subject, it requires a singular verb. Now, in many cases, a singular noun will not end in S, but the singular verb will end in S, so that's something to keep in mind. The reverse of that is if we have a plural subject, it requires a plural verb. So often, a plural noun will end in an S, but a plural verb will not end in the S, and we'll see this here. So first, we'll start with singular subjects. The wise student works hard, okay? We know that student does not end in an S, so we know that it is singular, and we will put the S at the end of our verb, works. The plural of that would be the wise students work. Our verb would not need an S at the end. Now, if I changed this to children, okay, we have to keep in mind that children is a plural verb, even though it doesn't have an S at the end, and so we would still use work, which doesn't have an S at the end. So there are some exceptions, but generally speaking, your plural verb will end in an S. Another example is the sly politician lies. We're talking about a singular politician, so we'll have an S at the end of the verb, lies, and then the sly politicians lie, plural, so we don't need an S at the end of our verb. So generally speaking, if you have an S at the end of your subject, you don't need it at the end of your verb. And if you have, an S at the end of your verb, your subject does not have an S. So that's a little trick to remembering that. Now, based on this rule, it might sound like this is pretty simple to get subject-verb agreement down, but there are going to be some things that will try to throw us off. So we have to learn some more rules that build off of this first one. So rule number 2 is when we have a prepositional phrase involved in the sentence. So a subject will never be the object of a preposition. Sometimes a prepositional phrase comes between the subject and the verb of the sentence. So prepositional phrases begin with words like with, in, by, on, around, okay? And so what these prepositional phrases do is they're giving more extra information about the subject. So if we look at this sentence here, the carnival, which is our subject, with its dangerous rides and foods, okay? That's just providing us with more information about this subject. And then we look at the verb, it would be attracts large crowds to the Walmart parking lot. And we'll talk about why it is attracts. So you might be thrown off because we have this noun foods right here. And you normally wouldn't say foods attracts because that's an S at the end of the noun and an S at the end of the verb. But foods is not the subject of the sentence. Okay, that's part of the prepositional phrase that is describing more information about the carnival. So essentially what we can do is we can just delete this part and the sentence will still make sense without it. The carnival attracts large crowds to the Walmart parking lot. Okay, so do not get tripped up by extra nouns in the sentence. Make sure that you're looking at the subject. Okay, so in this example, rides and foods are the objects of the preposition with, so they cannot be the subjects of a verb. And like I said, you can really just take that out and check to make sure that you've got your subject-verb agreement correct. Okay, another thing that can throw us off is if we have a compound subject. So there are two different types of compound subjects. The first one we're going to talk about are ones that are joined by and. So any compound subjects, when you have more than one that are joined by and, they will always take the plural form. They become plural because we're talking about multiple. So right here we have the singular subject rose and the singular subject teddy bear. But if we read this sentence, a rose and a teddy bear make, okay? So now we're talking about multiple. Even though rose and teddy bear are both singular, we would have make the plural verb. Perfect gifts for Valentine's Day, okay? So, like I said, and combines rose and bear, thus making it plural. Now, where this gets more complicated is if we have compound subjects joined by or nor. So for those, we have to look at the part of the subject that is closest to the verb. Okay, so we look at this sentence, Las Vegas showgirls or an Elvis impersonator. We have to ask ourselves, is Elvis impersonator singular or plural? So that's singular, we're only talking about one, so we'll need the singular verb adds to follow it, a finishing touch to a nice wedding. And that's because when we use or nor, we're giving an option between the two. We're not grouping them together. So then the sentence would read, Las Vegas showgirls or an Elvis impersonator adds a finishing touch to a nice wedding. Okay, because impersonator is the closest to the verb and is singular, we have to go with the verb adds. Now, if I just flip around that sentence and I put an Elvis impersonator first and then Las Vegas showgirls, we have to switch what the verb is, because now Las Vegas showgirls is closest to our verb, and so therefore we have a plural subject here that ends in S. Our verb will be plural, and we do not pick the one that ends in S here. And so anytime you have or nor, you need to remember to look at the subject that is closest to the verb, and that will determine what our subject-verb agreement looks like. Now we're going to talk about our last rule with subject-verb agreement, and it's really important that you know what indefinite pronouns are in order to understand this last rule. So these words right here are indefinite pronouns, and they are singular, although some of them might appear as if they were plural words. So even though everybody might appear as being plural because it's talking about multiple people, it's grouping those people together into one unit called everybody, which becomes singular. So it's important to make note and remember that these words are singular when you're considering subject-verb agreement. And we'll see that in play in these sentences. So each of these sentences start with an indefinite pronoun. For example, this one right here, each of the wrestlers takes ballet lessons. So you might be thrown off by of the wrestlers, which is a prepositional phrase. And you might be inclined to say, okay, wrestlers is plural, so then we need the plural verb, which would be take, because more naturally we would say wrestlers take ballet lessons. But whenever we put each in front of that, each is actually the subject of the sentence, and wrestlers is the object of the preposition. So we would say each takes ballet lessons, and of the wrestlers is just giving us more information about each. So the sentence would read, each of the wrestlers takes ballet lessons. So don't be thrown off just because wrestlers is closest to the verb, because wrestlers is not the subject of our sentence. We see that again here with either of the assignments offers a great opportunity for fun. Okay, so you might be thrown off by assignments, but that is the object of the preposition, not the subject of the sentence. So you really can kind of just mark that out. Oh, sorry about that. So you really can just kind of mark that out and it be either offers a great opportunity for fun. So that's a good way to check, is cover up what's in that prepositional phrase, or just mark through it, delete it, and check that way. And so that's the last rule. It's really important that you know these indefinite pronouns, because that helps you look out for those are good signals that we need a singular verb. So review these rules. This should help you out with subject and verb agreement. Definitely pay attention to those things that are good signals. For example, like we said, those indefinite pronouns are good signals. Looking for if we have compound subjects joined by or if they're joined by and. Those are good things to look out for as well. And then looking out for those prepositional phrases. So I hope this helps with your understanding of subject-verb agreement, and this better helps you with your future endeavors.